Jai Guru, everyone.
Jai Guru.
Welcome to the fifth part of our Chapter 1 Yogananda podcast. We're doing Autobiography of Yogi line by line. How's everyone doing? Lauren?
Yeah, very well, thank you. How's everyone else?
Good, thank you. Mike?
Amazing.
Excellent. I had a relaxing trip to Encinitas yesterday, so I recharged.
Yes, I saw some cool pictures there on jesus.christ.yoga. There's some good ones there. People should go there on Instagram. Let's talk about this. Part 5 of this beautiful. So now we've all had a go at hosting. How does everyone feel about hosting now? This format of the Autobiography of Yogi line by line sequence that we're doing. Is everyone happy with it? Yes, Chris.
Well, I think given that we all have slightly different styles, there's got to be a way of trying to find our feet. But if the audience has any suggestions, I would love to hear from them as well, because ultimately we're here to serve. So if people listening have a comment to share, pitch in. We'd be happy to hear your views.
I agree, and I wonder if the audience likes the round robin approach, keeps it fresh, right? Each time there's like a different person talking the majority of the episode.
You wouldn't be fishing for compliments, would you, Mike? We're getting
no, please don't.
we're getting so many of those, and the person that's getting the most compliments, Lauren, is you. I don't know if that's because you're new and everyone wants to encourage you, or like they're genuine.
It may be. If so, thank you all very much.
She's doing a fantastic job. Great to have a feminine energy amongst us.
Yeah, mixing it up.
Stallions.
Maybe that's why it's a fresh dose.
Yeah. So part 5. So this section of the Autobiography of a Yogi, we're going to cover chapter 1. So we're going to cover these about 12 paragraphs. So it starts from one of my most precious possessions is that photograph of Lahiri Mahasaya, and it goes on describe how that photograph was taken and then taken again, and then there's some elements of Guruji's experience in experiencing the light of divinity. So there's that, and it ends with him talking to God, and the last line is, "This memory persisted long after the day of rapture." Chris?
We're so early in the whole book still. How many pages are we in? So it's pretty short, what, 10, 11 pages?
Mm-hmm.
And we're getting treated so many stories and such revelations. Say for a layperson reading this, it's just mind-blowing. You're getting your mind blown in every page, which is incredible. And like you said, if this story about say Lahiri Mahasaya and the picture wasn't enough to get you thinking, there's Yogananda saying about talking with God and having these moments of divinity touching him. So it's just a really full-paced, heavy-hitting kind of entry into the book, but he does it in such a light way that it's so easy to read, isn't it? It's you just go through it with such ease. So yeah, really, really beautiful.
Yes, I do agree, lots of mind-blowing stories that we've spent probably 8 hours now delving into already, the first chapter.
Mm-hmm.
But is there potentially a more ahimsa friendly, non-violent metaphor than mind-blowing?
Well, it's more the expansion, isn't it? Like the Big Bang. This big expansion of mind is how I think about it.
Maybe mind-boggling is better.
Mind-boggling, there you go.
Mind blowing up. A balloon.
I meant in this metaphorical sense, thanks.
not the popping of the balloon, it's the expansion.
Expansion, yeah, thank you.
just playing. So the first paragraph, we're going to split into a couple of sections. First paragraph, first line, is about the precious photograph of Lahiri Mahasaya, and Guruji calls it one of his most precious belongings, and he said that his father was given it by Lahiri Mahasaya himself, and then he also says that it carries a special vibration, a holy vibration, sanctified perhaps. So I was wondering what this holy vibration thing is. I was trying to do some research on Yogananda's writing about this, and it doesn't mention this concept. Well, not that I could find. I couldn't really find this concept of holy vibration much. Yeah, Chris.
I was going to say something, but I don't want to derail from, I think, where you're going with this. So I'll come back to my comment later.
So effectively, let's talk about what holy vibration could mean for us, Mike.
I think the fact that he was given it by the guru and it's a material thing, that way at least it already carries his vibration, which is already something. Even if it wasn't a picture of him, even though it was just a pen, but he gave it to you, I would probably put it on my altar and just keep it there.
It could be something maybe to do with how it's perceived as well. So we talk about when you even utter, the word Babaji or one of the gurus, you get their blessing, and you're closer to them because you think of them as close. So maybe just by the sheer reminiscing of the great guru, thereby, it carries that holy vibration because you made it so. In that sense, so you're establishing that connection. So maybe it's that two-way, the material sense, in this case, very strong, and then simply putting the attention and the presence of thought on the guru would make it certainly holy as well.
Interesting. What if I had changed those words? This may be perceived as blasphemy. Let me change those words. What if it had said it carries a consecration? The photograph is consecrated. How would you feel about that word instead of holy vibration, Mike?
I feel like I'm like the token Catholic here, so like this word carries some kind of religious meaning with it, right? So some people, they feel very good about old religion and some people don't, and you definitely get this whole energy in from there. But I think consecrated, I don't really like, English is my second language, so I think it means some kind of version of it's being blessed, right? Like I remember when later on in the book we'll talk about Theresa Neumann, and she said if the wafers aren't consecrated, she can't swallow them, for example. So I'm guessing it's just a different word with a different origin, but the meaning is very similar, isn't it?
To answer that, Mike, I have the dictionary definition. You know, I all love a dictionary definition. It says the action of making or declaring something, typically a church, sacred.
Yes, making. That is the word, that making something holy. So I wanted to get to that. So in Indian temples, lots of you'll see statues, symbols, you'll see various puja processes happening every day in a temple. And what's happening is they're keeping the energy high, or where it's supposed to be, or sustaining it. Because what's happened is someone that's aware, a master, or sometimes just a Brahmin that's aware, he knows how to do it through generations. They consecrate sometimes a stone, sometimes other objects, and it carries a very holy vibration. And this is the word that Guruji has used. He's used the word holy vibration, but in Hindu law, it's about consecration in temples. So the science is that if you go to a space, a temple, you don't need to even offer a prayer. You can just sit there, and then you'll imbibe something of that vibration. Chris?
I think for me, I see that in this case is probably quite appropriate, really, to think of it in that way. A fellow devotee told me once before that she would put the pictures of the gurus behind, in and around her house, but she would put it behind where she would hold her water, because she felt that actually the holy vibration coming from the pictures was so strong it would actually cleanse the water. So she really felt that this was very much true in her life with the pictures, and it wouldn't have been in this case where it was given by the father, by Lahiri Mahasaya himself. It was a copy of a picture. So whether maybe or not in this case it's even consecrated, it might not matter, or maybe if it does matter, maybe it just amplifies what's already there. But I'll put that into the conversation as well.
So in my was that not your sister, Mike? Did she not do something like that, or was it you? Can't remember. We had that conversation with your sister when she was on, didn't we? About holy water.
Possibly.
On that episode. In the previous series. So in my mind, so when the picture was given by Lahiri Mahasaya, there's even excluding the story of how it's miraculous origin, how it was actually taken. In my mind, Lahiri Mahasaya would have actually energized it, consecrated it in some way. So this is not just a piece of paper with ink. So actually, the ink has very little significance. It's been energized. So he's given something that's like of high, spiritual, holy vibration, and then that becomes like a temple, a worshipable temple. The picture, the piece of paper, regardless of the picture that's on it. The fact that the picture is of Lahiri Mahasaya is a bonus. Lauren?
Do you feel that potentially, if one is a master, that anything they touch becomes imbued with that holy vibration? So maybe they don't necessarily have to consciously infuse it. Do you think potentially actually them just touching that object that manifests that holy vibration? Because if you think about it, you've got, this may flow into something else you're going to talk about, Priyank, but we've got, the different items that Guruji touched and things like that. And I think if we were to hold those things, potentially we'd feel that presence that he had. What do you think?
Mike?
For me, it's comes back to this concept that to those who feel me near, I will be near. And partially, if you go, for example, you go to Lake Shrine and you go to the gift shop, the backside of the gift shop is a museum full of items that Guruji used to have on his desk. There's his desk, but then there is also the camera he used to use. There's like and a lot of little things that he used to have, and I'm sure all of those items are consecrated. And the vibration is, and the whole Lake Shrine has Guruji's vibration, but also it like convinces your mind that he's actually here, or you remember he was holding this, he was using this, and those are all tools to kind of make you feel him near.
Yes. Going back to your question, Lauren, it's difficult to know. Don't think I wonder if he talks about it anyway. I can't think of it. I can't think of it offhand if he actually talks about it directly. But interesting. It's an interesting parallel, the actual consecration versus just a physical touch of the master, what it has on an inert object such as a piece of paper with some ink on it. But listeners, tell us what you think about that. Mike?
But then if like your guru, if like you were Yogananda was in the flesh, or he came to you he appeared to you and he would give you something, would you not keep it? Would you not just, or would you think, oh, I'm not sure if he consecrated it or not?
You missed my you missed my point. Of course I would keep it. But I'm talking about, is there something much deeper that happened with Lahiri Mahasaya that we're not actually told about in this? Is it? Yeah, so that was my
right
exploration, as it were. Yeah, the listeners, tell us what you think. So let's talk about holy vibration. So Mike talked about the gift shop. So if you go to Mother Center, obviously you can see all these beautiful things. For example, just speaking with some people on our YouTube channel about this, it just came up about Master's living room, and this comes up in the minute. If you go in Master's living room, there's like Sri Yukteswara's holy stick. Sorry, Sri Yukteswara's walking stick is there. Babaji's picture is obviously there. Locks, and if you go to London Center in the social hall, there's locks of Guruji's hair that's just being put in like a glass showcase. There's a brick from Sri Yukteswara's ashram. So London Center and SRF obviously looking after these various things, and SRF is going to the trouble of actually sending little relics to centers around the world, which is quite, is it just something that's heartfelt, sentimental, or is it something that actually means something in terms of the energy and what impact it would have to devotees? Lauren?
Maybe in some ways it goes back to what Mike was saying earlier, how having that object there makes it more real for us, that these things actually happened, these beings exist, because I think for some people at some point in their journey, it can feel quite far off. You read about these things and these beings aren't here in their physical bodies anymore, and those sort of thoughts perhaps come in. You think, well, that was a long time ago, can it really be? And then when you see something that person actually held, or you see a lock of their hair, you're reminded that, yes, and I think for those, particularly maybe even at the start of their journey, it can be a nice, like, solid remembrance and reminder that this is reality.
Did you, after you told me you didn't actually know that they were there a few weeks ago, did you actually have you had a chance to have a look at them yet?
Yeah, I did when I was at the center on Sunday, I think it was.
What did you?
Yeah.
How was your feeling?
It was really interesting. To be honest, I wasn't quite sure how to feel. It was just quite like, it's there, yeah. For me, it's the picture when you walk into center of
in the foyer.
Mm.
That's the leg shrine dedication one, I believe. Yeah, it's quite a beautiful one. And then just behind that picture, you go into the courtyard, is a picture of Lake Shrine. Really massive,
Yeah.
really massive one. It's quite nice. Nice touch. I only just realized that touch. Well done, whoever decided. I know actually the monks actually get involved. There's a particular monk, I think, that gets involved with the design of the center and all that kind of stuff. So yes. So, and if you aren't able to go to Mother Center, the convocation pages of the Self-Realization Fellowship has a fantastic virtual tour of Lake Shrine, of Mother Center, of Encinitas. So please do have a look at that. You can have a look. It's quite beautiful. So the other things that we like to think have a holy vibration is flowers that have been used in commemoration services. So we tend to keep those petals, and then during our meditations, perhaps we can touch them or smell them or touch them to our forehead and bring us to a deeper state of devotion, perhaps, if you need it, especially if you're going through a lull, as we often do. Personally, I keep lots of little relics and stuff that I find or go to holy places. Like I've been to pilgrimage called Kailash, which is the abode of Shiva. It's probably the biggest pilgrimage an Indian can do, or a Buddhist, actually. Tibetan Buddhists go there as well, and Jains. So yeah, it's a very significant place. I've got a rock from there, and I've just put it in my garden. Mike?
Yeah, tell us more about this, Priyan, because this is super interesting. As far as I know, isn't Kailash in Tibet, and isn't that like in China right now? And I think there is one side of it that's in Nepal, or is that not true?
No, it's wholly in Tibet, so South China.
Okay.
But
Okay.
it's very, very close to India and Nepal. And you can actually see it from the Nepalese border. You can actually there's a spot where you can see it, and it's actually if you look at it from say 30 miles away, it's the only it's like a pyramid. It's the only mountain, even though it's amidst the Himalayas. It's just a mind-blowing picture where it's just defies science. And obviously there's a whole mythological history about that mountain. Mike, have you got your hand up raised again? No.
No.
Yeah, so readers can read about that. And adjacent to that mountain is Manasarovar, Lake Manasarovar, where lots of ETs have been thought to come up and down and using it as some sort of portal, perhaps the portal to Hiranyaloka or other places such as this. We don't know. But yeah, so I've got some water from that place. And when I went there, I dipped my Rudraksh that I wear that I use for Kriya. I dipped it into that water. I put my bell in there, the bell that I use for various things, and there nearby there's some very, very important Shiva temples in Nepal, and so Shiva temples have something called a linga, which is like an ellipsoid form. So that's an example of a consecrated energy form in a form of an ellipsoid, which is a 3D ellipse. So yeah, I've got some very big Rudraksh from Pashupatinath, which is one of the most important Shiva temples. That the beads are touching that stone, and I've got those, and I keep those in my altar. That's the base of the altar. So I like to keep things that I believe to have a holy vibration, and in some way, hopefully, they support me. Chris,
were you guys there? I think you were. Maybe, sorry, Lauren, maybe not yourself, but Brother Chidananda when he visited in 2000 and I want to say 19. And there was honey, little pots of honey with Guruji's face printed on it, right? I've got that, and that's on my bedside table. I leave it at home in Northern Ireland. I don't take it from here to Brazil, I'd lose it. I imagine, but it's amazing, and it's just there. It's always, greeting me in the morning. It's there at nighttime, and usually my eyes get drawn to it if for, let's say, motivation, and it's there to remind me of Guruji's vibration, and it does a great job of that. And I love that. It's got a real special place in my heart. That little pot of honey. But something when we're talking about Catholic religions here, says my mum's Catholic, and I was in the Vatican a few months back, and they have a great store there, and you can buy lots of things. And one of them is the holy water, very small bottles of holy water. And so I thought I'd buy my mum that. It was my wife actually prompted me to do it. And I got back, and Christmas comes around. Christmas was fairly recently, and she gets these. At the end of it, I said, "Oh, you've got one more gift," and I give her the holy water, and she was in near tears. For her, it was very, very special. So for all the little gifts we gave her, she was most content, most pleased with this, blessed holy water from the Vatican. So take it that what you will. I think Catholics do certainly have a connection with holy water. But it's very potent, very strong, and means it's very close to people's hearts. This sort of thing.
I was a bit conflicted. I remember now the honey that Prachinanda handed out at the London Center, and I was like, see, I could keep this honey and put it on my altar, and it would probably stay there for years, and in 10, 20 years it will still be there. Or I can just have the honey, and maybe that way the kind of blessing would also I don't know how you would explain that, but it
Manifest.
would also happen. Manifest, exactly. In a sacred ceremony where I take the honey and spread it on a bread and butter or something.
Yeah.
And I chose the latter. But yeah, I never know what to do when I get something that is, like Priyank said, consecrated but also edible, if I should actually keep it or not.
The picture itself. So Guruji says that it was his most prized possession. Where is it? We know that there's a painting, and we're going to talk about that painting later. But he got a painting made from that picture. But where is that picture? I don't know. Perhaps it's kept in some archive, sort of, perfectly preserved archive that, it probably is. But if it was that important to Guruji, perhaps they wouldn't want to put it on display because it's, preserve its holy vibrations. If Guruji has written in the autobiography, let's look at the significance, right? So perhaps, that's why they don't want to leave it out. Maybe they'll take it out for special occasions. I don't know. Perhaps when they elect or when monks take their monastic vows, perhaps they bow to that picture. I'm just guessing. Mike,
Would you think that picture is actually in the US or is it actually in India? Because the painting later was made in India, right?
Yeah.
So he would probably not have taken it to America.
If he says our listeners, please do tell us. But if he says it's his most prized possession, you wouldn't leave your prized possession in another country. I wouldn't anyway. Guruji obviously is different, so maybe it is in India, maybe it's in some YSS ashram. But I imagine, my guess is that it's in some perfectly preserved archive in one of our centers in California, I imagine. So listeners, if you know, do tell, so others can know. Let's go to the important part now. We've had a good segue into holy stuff. Let's go back into the meat of this section. So the next part is about the picture and how that picture was taken, and how there was the picture taken, and there's some miracles that happened. So we'll just go through that. So this story was told by Father's brother disciple Gali Kumar Roy, and he's mentioned again, I think, later on in the autobiography. So we don't know much about him, but he's mentioned twice. So Lahiri Mahasaya didn't want to be photographed. We can only guess as to why. Perhaps he wanted very few photographs of him, and then when we have very few of something, then we seem to treasure it a lot more, don't we? So perhaps that is he could see the events that were to pass in the future. Perhaps he wanted to place less emphasis or importance on himself, and he knew the lineage would continue. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I thought about this, that it's a lesson, isn't it, really, for us, whether or not he strictly intended it that way. It's, as you say, it's maybe multifaceted. Maybe he just didn't want his picture taken on the day. But indeed, we're going to talk about the individual that had tried to take the picture and go into that in a little bit more detail. So maybe it was a direct lesson for that individual, and the consequences of that might have been great as we're talking about it today. So yeah, I would put my bet as a lesson for the rest of this.
Lesson being, be explicit, Chris, with the lesson.
Oh, okay. Guruji's life is a lesson for
no,
this
all, specific lesson. What is this lesson?
Sure. But in this case, is that the ability is there, isn't it? That there's the truth behind the ability. So for me, it's, my mind goes to, well, how could you do that? And then you get into the yogic cities and things, all the
Oh, so
sorts
you're
of
talking
places.
about the miracle element. Oh, I thought you were talking about this is why it's good we clarified. I thought you were talking about how people are too obsessed with photographs, vainly obsessed with photographs nowadays, and we should place less emphasis on our appearance and photographs and selfies and all those things and other things like that. Maybe that's something to that. Yeah, Chris.
It did remind me of the story of maybe some tribes people in parts of the world that are quite untouched, but they're very, very skeptical and cynical about pictures. They really don't. Many of them don't really enjoy the pictures. Certainly, pictures being taken. I think there's one tribe, a story there in particular, that they really felt like it was taking their soul, like it was actually capturing part of them. So who knows? I have no idea.
Do you know where the most untouched tribe is?
Brazil?
From civilization? No, it's actually an island in between India and Thailand. It's called the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. There's some islands that basically no one's allowed to go to. There's some tribes people there, and India's basically completely protected the area. And I think some crazy lunatic missionary actually went there with Bibles, and they killed him because they're literally with spears and stuff. So yeah, and they're really protected. Yeah, Chris.
I was going to counter that, which is, how would you know where the most secluded one is?
So they're completely. We've taken satellite. We've taken satellite images of their their habitations and stuff like that, and they've been untouched, as it were. And yeah, there's very few contact. But I went to a nearby island where you can go for my honeymoon. Yeah, Mike.
I wanted to mention that photography was a pretty new technology at the time, right? And I think before photography came along, people would make portraits of themselves, and it would take at least an hour or longer for people to create those, and you would have to pose, and nobody would take a portrait of you without asking, right? And maybe that culture had changed once photography came along. I'm not sure how those early cameras work, but I'm guessing it was just easier to take a picture without someone's consent. And Lahiri Mahasaya used this opportunity to perform a miracle that was for everyone to see, right? And that's what the masters do.
Okay, very true. It was true, though. You're right. The photography was very new. I just had a quick search, and the first photo I ever taken
1839.
Oh, I just read 26. 39. Okay.
Okay.
But very early, obviously, especially commercial application, which is what this would have been, not just an invention. So yeah, it was very early. That could be part of it as well. But so this first attempt was taken. This devotee who we don't know tried to take this picture, and what happened was that he took the picture, and everyone was there, but there was a blank space where Lahiri Mahasaya was supposed, where they knew him to be, there. Now, imagine how much that picture is worth. If we could find that, listeners, if you got that picture, please do share it. But apparently, this phenomenon was widely discussed, as you'd expect. This kind of miracle, but it would be quite a cool image, wouldn't you? Because, like, imagine if you had that picture, like, if us four were doing the Zoom call and Chris disappears, he's just invisible, and we show, yeah, exactly, and we showed that video to some people. They'll be like, oh yeah, he's not there. Why are you saying he's there? He obviously wasn't there. So a lot of people would have just said that, right? Obviously that's just the empty space. And then everyone would have been like, no, I was there. He was right next to me. And then that's probably where the phenomena becomes a phenomena, and actually gossip spreads like wildflower. And then everyone starts to come to Lahiri Mahasaya for a miracle, to see some miracles or to test him. And this comes to the next point, because we have a student who says he was an expert photographer, And so this photographer must have thought that, you know, this previous guy didn't know what he was doing. I've got, you know, I know what I'm doing. I've studied photography. I know about physics. So he went to the guru with perhaps an incorrect attitude, you might say. So, because the first photo that was taken, we talked about why, you know, why this pastime is there, like why Lahiri Mahasaya allowed this to kind of happen. Perhaps it was because, you know, this invisibility is like a miracle that shows his divinity very subtly, because just as we said, you know, most people would dismiss it, wouldn't they? But a believer, or someone with faith, their eyes would open and they would go towards the guru. Yeah, Lauren?
Yeah, I also feel like the wording here is quite telling, because it says, over his protest, a picture was once taken of him and a group of devotees. So he actually didn't want his photograph to be taken. So again, he's saying, well, I didn't want it, so you can't have it. You know? And yeah, again, I just feel like that's telling, because he obviously didn't want it taken. So, you know.
Yep. But it happened.
It did.
It did happen. So then this student photographer, expert photographer, whose name was Ganga Dhar Babu, he said that, you know, this saint, this figure won't escape him, which is quite a thing to say. He's calling Lahiri Mahasaya a fugitive figure. And saying that he's essentially coming with quite a lot of pride, isn't he? And I thought we'd talk about how one approaches a guru. So, you know, in India, gurus are like a cultural norm. You know, there's many gurus or Brahmins or, you know, priests that are thought of as a guru, and probably incorrectly, because that's not a guru. Just because a priest is a priest doesn't mean that he's your guru. But that's generally what the culture is. You respect people in that profession as a guru. So there's approach where it's a cultural norm and people just go to them because, you know, in a prayerful mood they would go to anyone that's considered holy or wearing the saffron robes. So there's that one way of going to a guru, and in that people often want to take a picture, selfies with gurus and with holy men and things like that. There's that approach. Then there's an approach which is probably where Ganga Dhar Babu took, where he wanted to test him. He wanted to see, like, is this guy for real? Is this just fairy tale? Is it for real? No doubt there was a tinge of pride in that, because he thought he may be real, but, you know, physics is science. Not going to elude my my knowledge of science. So I think he was probably there doing two things: to test him, test his own faith, and then also he's got a bit of pride. He wanted to disprove or prove whatever he wanted to. And then there's the ultimate way that you can go to the guru, which is obviously to offer your devotion and to seek to learn and all those good things. And then there's also people that go to gurus because they want material things. So, you know, please let me get this job, or please let me get this house, or let my son find a good wife, or all those things. You know, these are very common prayers that people would have for a guru. And some most of the time the guru would just say, you know, let it be so, and they'll give that blessing. Often, but sometimes you'd get gurus that would say the opposite, and they wouldn't be very popular. But that you might actually need that to overcome some limitations because if you're going to a guru, you shouldn't be going for material things. You should be going for spiritual things. And if that means that you have to forego material things, then you're gaining the ultimate, aren't you? So you should be willing to allow the blessing to seem like a curse where you're losing something, but actually you're gaining the infinite. So there's that approach too, and that's quite a common approach, the material blessings approach. Mike?
I wonder what kind of which you described right now, Ganga Dhar Babu was when he came, because he says he was a student of Lahiri Mahasaya, but was he there because he thought that Lahiri Mahasaya was like a holy man, or was he maybe there for other reasons? But I guess what happened later on kind of did a lot of convincing in his case.
I think my approach to the guru, should I, have been able to transport myself back in time to be in the physical presence, being from my background, Irish background, probably would have been very timid. I definitely would have been approaching the guru in this matter at all, if at all. Even it might be a state of awe. I might have been to that extreme. But it is fascinating to me that even in the presence of a guru like this, depending on your receptivity, you could be so, let's say, you could have that blocked, that receptivity by your own doing of the blessings that you could get just by being in the presence of a guru, to maybe to miss out and to not actually gain those blessings, right? There's great stories that we'll see in the autobiography later of a devotee with Sri Yukteswar that went wayward, and that was even under a great love and care by the guru at the time, still managed to go wayward. So it is, the approach, just thinking about this now, is all to do with the devotee, because the guru gives 100% and more, right? And then it's all, everything else is just missed because of the devotee. So in this instance, obviously this individual kind of comes around, right? But it certainly isn't an approach that I would think would have been the best way to approach a guru and somebody as exalted as Lahiri Mahasaya. I certainly wouldn't have been brave enough or silly enough to do it. I don't know which adjective I should use.
One thing we could say in the defense of Ganga Dhar Babu, and I'm not even sure if that's true, but I feel like in India, there's a lot of gurus that claim miraculous powers. And then I feel like people in India, they're maybe a bit jaded about all of this. And they first want to see because they feel like, yeah, I've heard this many times, and maybe they've been let down a few times before. And so they sometimes actually need to see the real thing.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. But needing to see it is obviously also a kind of limitation or an imposition, isn't it? Or like, I want to see you perform this or that, is just about your quite silly need to verify something, as opposed to a position where it's unconditional, which is what the ultimate way to approach is. But yeah, Chris?
Yeah, and that speaks to something of, if you're easily led, you can, in one way, then you could be easily led away. If you're easily led to God, you could be very easily led away from God by other trickery, let's say, and be taken down the wrong path by somebody indirectly or directly that might have a maybe subpar manifestation or expression of divinity. So yeah, it's certainly falling short of the ideal, if that's what you're looking for.
Indeed.
Yeah, I think that's true as well, Chris. But also, something that did just spring to mind is that Guruji has said, don't just believe what I say, find for yourself the truth behind these words. So, I mean, in the context of this, it's a little different, but I suppose if you took it to this, perhaps people do, like in the front of this book, except you see signs and wonders you will not believe. Is that yeah?
Yeah.
Perhaps some people do physically need to see that to understand that this again is truth. And whilst you do not need to, and we shouldn't be after these outward miracles and showings. Yeah, maybe some people just need them to get them started on the path and their own journey. It's also unique, isn't it? So I guess for some of us, we don't need it, and maybe some do.
It'd be quite a fool's errand, though, wouldn't it, to go searching for a miracle?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Could you
What a
imagine?
waste of energy.
Could you imagine? And it's like it's something that probably the more you look, the less likely you will be to find it. The less you look, probably
Yeah.
the more likely. So it's one of those like catch-22s. But yeah, no doubt there's people out there that are, you know, rainbow gold seekers. So yeah, so Ganga Dhar Babu, then he took every precaution for success. And he went back and, you know, he set up a screen behind Lahiri Mahasaya. I wonder what other precautions he took. Do you reckon he told Lahiri Mahasaya, like, wear a coat. I know your skin is ethereal, but this piece of cloth is definitely not ethereal. You know, yeah, Lauren?
I think it's also really funny that Lahiri Mahasaya was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna like tag this guy along. He literally sat there, and they probably did this for, you know, quite some time, because back in the days, you know, you'd have to set up your lighting, and you'd have to get the right, and you know, Lahiri Mahasaya is just thinking, what a fool. And he's just, you know, obviously I can't put words into his mind, but you know what I mean? It's just so funny how he did this whole thing, just as a lesson for this person.
Yes, indeed. So he took 12 photos. 12, is there significance? Number 12, we don't know. 12 photos, and it was failed. So the wooden bench that he was sitting on, the screen was there, but the form was missing. So we just, I nearly fell off my chair there. We just understood. We just saw that my handle disappeared, just like Lahiri Mahasaya's picture.
There you go. There's a miracle. You don't have to...
I wasn't looking. You would have just seen my feet flying. So yeah, so Ganga Dhar Babu came to Lahiri Mahasaya expectant and with a bit of pride, potentially, you know, the least ideal way to approach a guru, but approaching the guru all the same. The desire is there. And now there's a lovely story in Swami Satyananda's book about the biography of Lahiri Mahasaya. So it's linked to this, perhaps in some way. So Shastri Mahasaya, who's Yogananda's Sanskrit tutor, if you remember, spent time in Lahiri Mahasaya's company for 10 years, and he was his guru before receiving initiation in Benares. And at that time, he had another teacher, which was Bhaskarananda Paramahansa. And Bhaskarananda was eager. He was another teacher. He was eager to receive initiation of Kriya Yoga. And then because he was quite renowned as a teacher, he invited Lahiri Mahasaya to come to his ashram to initiate him. And when Lahiri Mahasaya heard about this request, he said, "Does the thirsty man go to the well, or does the well move toward the thirsty man? Does the thirsty man go to the well, or does the well move toward the thirsty man?" It's a statement that would floor you, isn't it? And he ended up, obviously, he then ended up going to the guru as opposed to inviting the guru to come and see you. And I thought this was an interesting parallel, because then what happens? So Ganga Dhar Babu has, if we go to card 3, Ganga Dhar Babu has now, like, he's acknowledged his his limiting view of the guru, and his pride is being shattered, and that's what's written in the autobiography. And he's coming back to the guru with tears. Now he is now coming to the guru with perhaps a much more receptive state to the blessings of the guru, and he, you know, he came to Lahiri Mahasaya, but again there was another test. So he was, you know, there probably apologizing or asking for something, and Lahiri Mahasaya made him wait many hours before breaking his silence. So there was a test with the photo, that whole play. And then there's also a multiple hour wait before he actually responds to when he comes back after the failed photography attempt. Mike?
I find this so interesting. I wish, like Lauren said earlier, like I wish I would have been a fly on the wall the first time he took those 12 pictures. What were they actually talking about, right? Like he was coming with all this equipment and putting the screen behind him. And what was Lahiri Mahasaya saying? It's like, oh yeah, welcome my son, and you know, and now this time, it actually happens, and I feel like we have to give credit to Ganga Dhar Babu. Not only did his story make it into Autobiography of a Yogi, but also no other picture was taken afterwards, right? Mm-hmm. So it is a significant event, and Lahiri Mahasaya chose him as his photographer, right? And now this is the one picture we have of him.
Indeed. So Lahiri Mahasaya breaks his silence and he says, and I'm quoting verbatim, "I am spirit. Can your camera reflect the omnipresent invisible?" I am spirit. Can your camera reflect the omnipresent invisible? Now, so he's now explaining what actually happened, right? He's giving a clue into basically the deepest mysteries, both in physics and in metaphysics, isn't he? And I found a very interesting section in God Talks with Arjuna about this concept about the images in reality. So Mike, if you want to scroll down and read for us the first paragraph.
The conception of man's physical, astral, and ideational bodies can be more easily understood by the following explanation. God dreamt the entire creation in terms of ideas. Then he said, "Let there be light," and there was light. He vibrated those ideas into dreams, into dream lights, and out of them created a dream astral cosmos. Then he condensed the dream astral cosmos into a dream physical universe. After the macrocosmic universes were created, God made the microcosmic objects of creation. He created man as a composite of three dreams: a dream ideational body encased in a dream astral body within a dream physical body.
The sages therefore say, the successful yogi has to withdraw his mind from the dream physical body, dream astral body, and dream ideational body, and dissolve those forms into the dream physical cosmos, dream astral cosmos, and dream ideational cosmos. When the yogi can dissolve the dream physical cosmos into the dream astral cosmos, and the dream astral cosmos into the dream ideational cosmos, and the multitudinous ideas of the ideational cosmos into the unified perception of cosmic consciousness, then he becomes free, like the spirit.
A tongue twister for you there.
Oh,
Very well prepared to read those, Lauren. Well done.
Yes.
Carry on, Chris.
Shall I continue? The Spirit has dreamed itself into the aspects of God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, Sat, Tat, Om, and into the dream ideational, astral, and physical universes, and into the dream ideational, astral, and physical bodies. Thus the soul, as the image of God, has descended from the omnipresence of cosmic consciousness to the limitations of its earthly surroundings and of the three dream bodies. So the aspirant yogi must withdraw his consciousness from all dream illusions and finally unite his soul with the ever-existent, ever-conscious, ever-new bliss of spirit.
Satchitananda. So, my friends, the middle paragraph that Lauren read out just told us that Lahiri Mahasaya has obviously in that state where he's realized that the dream within the dream within the dream, and he's, you know, unified his perception of cosmic consciousness, and he is of course free like the spirit. And as Chris then explains, we can also then learn how to do that, withdrawing, you know, all of our dream illusions. And then if you hate photos of yourself, then this is the ideal way to do it, because then, like Lahiri Mahasaya, then you will never appear at will in a photo again.
I should tell my dad that this is a method, because
He
if I know
hates
somebody
photos.
that dislikes photos, it's him.
Mm. Yes, indeed.
Very
So
good.
yeah, so Lahiri Mahasaya, obviously being in charge or being fully realized of his three bodies, he probably has three switches, temporarily flicked off that physical switch, and the camera notably only can take images of physical reality, and hence the astral and the ideational bodies were invisible to the camera, perhaps Chris.
How do you think it actually is done in some way with the vibrations of the atoms and the reflecting of the light? Because it's how we see each other is the reflection of light hitting us and being received. But yeah, it is curious to me. So how you actually think.
Are you asking how photos are made?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's with the cities, I guess.
How
strictly.
Lahiri Mahasaya did it, you're saying? You're asking.
Yeah.
What? Thanks for that hospital pass question. Well, I know the complete answer to that question.
We'll see how prepared you are to answer. Okay.
I thought that was the whole point in this reading that we did, the 3 paragraphs. You must have been dreaming whilst reading.
Yeah. But no, it does give us that. But then there is the mastery of individuals that we are blessed to hear about and learn about in the Autobiography of a Yogi over the cities. And I wonder if they fit into anyone in particular, because you know, being able to maybe go through certain walls, physical seeming objects, and whether that has something to do with maybe being light, being able to reflect off the atoms and things like this. I don't know.
Guruji writes that the knower of Brahman apparently leaves no footprints behind.
Or shadows, right?
Yeah. As the bird flies in the air, as the fish moves in the water without leaving any trace, so likewise the illumined soul leaves no footprint behind. So if you don't want to impact or touch this earth, that's also another way of doing it, guys. Self-realization. So Ganga Dhar Babu then, so he responds to, can your camera reflect the omnipresent invisible? And Ganga Dhar Babu says, I see it can't, but I want a picture. He basically says, he kind of admits how narrow his, how small his attitude was, as it were, and I'm paraphrasing. And then he acknowledges that, the divinity is fully manifest in you, Guru. Lauren?
Imagine how humble you would have to be to stand in front of a master and say, yeah, I didn't think you were fully realized, but now I do. Like, actually, imagine the courage to actually just be there and be so honest about it. Do you think you'd have the courage to stand in front of Guruji and say, oh, actually, I thought this about you, but now I don't?
Yeah, it would be tough, wouldn't it?
It's an interesting one.
If you come from such a high position of pride about knowing things, and then everything is broken, as Guruji describes.
But doesn't that show us just how much his consciousness and his life changed in that one happening? He went from pretty much that extreme opposite of, no, I'm going to get this picture, and then actually he changed in an instant. in a camera flash, it changed.
In some ways, I've heard whether you're looking for happiness or joy or God in a temple or a bar, it's kind of the same thing. It's just misdirected. That energy, that willingness to kind of seek whatever that is, that ultimately that we're seeking this union. It's there, right? So whenever I hear people who are like, staunch atheists, it's like, oh, you really believe that? There's something about that willingness to, even if it goes in the opposite direction, it kind of goes full circle. In a sense, like they're probably going to get to God quicker than a layperson who just doesn't care at all. They're still seeking something, seeking answers somehow. So I've got great empathy for people who are maybe, really opposing it in some way. They may find the path quicker than most.
Oh, if that's true, then I've got bags of empathy that I'm sorry, bags of this pride that I'm suppressing.
Yeah.
I could do the same thing. If it's quicker, I'm willing to play the role.
Who knows? You might get a slap up the backside of the head quicker anyway.
Willing to go to the center and start testing Guruji on his no, let's not do that.
No.
So yes, so then Lahiri Mahasaya says, okay, fine, he kind of concedes. He sees probably Ganga Dhar Babu's devotion, and as Lauren says, his 180 flip from being a not so ideal to essentially a humble, ideal devotee at this point. And he says, yes, come tomorrow morning. And why in the morning? I'm sure Ganga Dhar Babu had his camera in the trunk. Why not now? He says, come tomorrow. So perhaps he wants, so it's almost like an initiation for him, isn't it? So by making him initially wait 3 hours, like that devotion, that shattered pride is being shattered into the tiniest fragments. And then now with those fragments now, he's going to wait till the next day. So they'll be completely dissolved in his devotion. And then this now becomes like if it wasn't already a life changing or multiple life course changing event, then it certainly is going to be now tomorrow morning, because Lahiri Mahasaya is making it that way. So next morning he comes with his camera, and this time it's quite nice. This time the sacred figure, not cloaked with mysterious imperceptibility, was sharp on the plate. The master never posed for another picture. At least I have seen none. The photograph is reproduced in this book. So this photograph is in the Autobiography of Yogi. It is the very sharp black and white image of Lahiri Mahasaya on the, I think that could be leopard or deer skin. And he's looking absolutely majestic in his beautiful lotus Padmasana, the lotus posture, and he's got his fingers clasped around each hand, and he's wearing his dori, his Brahmin, so his string, his sacred thread that he takes, that Brahmins take when they take when they have their initiation. So he stayed as a householder, so he retained this dori, this string. There's some significance to that, but I can't remember. Listeners, why don't you chip in my area of lack of knowledge here? You kind of, it's just one fantastic image. And in the footnotes it says that Guruji, while in India in 1930s, when Guruji went back to India, he instructed a Bengali artist to change, to put this photograph into a painting, and this painting is now hung in Mother Center in Guruji's living room. So up on the 3rd or 4th floor where his bedroom is, the room adjoining that is what that's referred to as the living room. So if you go in and you turn immediately to the left, you will see Lahiri Mahasaya's picture, and it's on above like a bookshelf. Not picture, sorry, painting, because we don't know where the picture is. Mike?
Yeah, couldn't help but compare the two pictures, and I feel like the look that Lahiri Mahasaya has is a bit more calm on the painting, and I was wondering why this was done. Like, you have a photograph. Why would you have a painting of the photograph done? And I don't want to turn this into a hospital pass for anyone, but this is just something that question just came to my mind. And also, he added this, I don't know how you call this, what he's wearing in the painting.
Yeah, robes. Yeah.
He added this robe, and maybe this is something that is more fitting for an altar picture. But it's just my speculation.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point, Mike. Actually, is a half-naked man. Half-naked man is probably not what Westerners want to see on their altars, especially this kind of image. So if people are unclear as to whether they're looking at the original photograph or the replica painting, the way to tell, as Mike has identified, is one, with the painting you can see the robe, the white robe that goes over his shoulder, and that is the painting that is used on every single Self-Realization Fellowship altar, and that's the one we use. And that painting, the original painting, is there in Mother Center if you wish to see it. And interestingly, it's the background of that painting is like a deep peacock blue, whereas we've got this like a yellowy pinkish background in our altar images. So yeah, so if you're unclear as to whether you're looking at the painting or the picture, it's the robe or the string, the dori, that Lahiri Mahasaya is donning. So is he half naked in the picture, then it is the picture, and if he's got a robe, then it's the painting. So there you go, information should you need it, because there's lots of changed digitally enhanced images of Lahiri Mahasaya, more so than I dare say any of our other other gurus. Because I don't know why, but so if you that's the way to tell, basically. The sharp image, black and white image, is the original, where he's not wearing a robe. And so that's that. So yeah. So so Mike prefers do you say you prefer Lauren, do you want to come back quickly?
It's a question for any of you three, or our listeners or watchers, if they know. I haven't actually looked at this photograph properly till now. You can see there's a piece of what looks like material going from the top.
Yeah, thread
all the way around.
Yeah, that's the
thread.
Brahmin. Yeah, Brahmins wear that.
Is that what you were speaking
yeah,
of?
Yeah, the thread. It's
Okay.
a sacred thread. It's like a vow or an oath Brahmins take when they're initiated at a young age. But I don't know much about it, not being a Brahmin myself. I just know.
Apologies if you said it. I was looking too deeply at the photograph. Wow.
But yeah, no, it is interesting, because you'll see many Brahmins even today, even in the West, they'll still wear this string. They've been told to wear it, and they have to wear it for pretty much their whole lives. So you'll see like sometimes it's black. You'll see that they're wearing it round underneath their t-shirt. You'll see it sometimes like flicking out. But yeah, so I think this whole conversation and this whole turn of events, one of the other thing it shows you is that you can't trust your senses. You can't really trust images, because even our eyesight only sees like a very narrow band of visible light. There's all these other light forms that we can't see, the wavelengths that we can't see, and frequencies that we can't hear. So there's all sorts of stuff going, and if someone says, "Oh, this isn't there," it may be there. You don't know, right, Chris?
And it was Lahiri Mahasaya was saying to devotees, why do you need to come to see me in physical form when I'm with you? Not in the physical. So maybe this is another message in that nature, as you're saying, that there's a lot that we can't see.
Very good.
In that form. And I think it was in 1956 that they swapped out the picture for the painting in the book, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Good bit of trivia there.
Mhm.
But it's not just our senses, our beautiful sense of hearing and seeing and all that is flawed. Even scientific senses are flawed. You know, their ability to quantify time goes completely wrong. If you see the film Interstellar, you'll see all the paradoxes with time and black holes and time going backwards. It's all theoretically possible, but absolutely mind-boggling. And not to mention things like dark matter and dark energy. So even science, you know, is flawed in terms of its approach and it's what it sees. You know, one year it will see it like this, and the next year someone will come up with something new and it will change the paradigm completely. Mike?
Yeah, I'm repeating myself, but I feel like that's also one of the significances of what happened there, is that he came with this new technology, and whenever you come up with new technology, you feel like a triumph of science versus religion sometimes, and you go like, and then maybe this experience made like, yeah, no matter what technology you have, if you are a fully relaxed master, this is all child's play for you.
Indeed. And therefore, you know, that famous saying, I think, therefore I am, or the cogito ergo sum, is, you might say, completely flawed. Descartes was sorry. I think he corrected his theory. I think, no, said something. Anyway, I am, therefore I exist. I think he corrected it.
I think, therefore I am. Right.
That was his initial one. And then he changed it.
Then he changed it.
Yeah,
okay,
he changed it because he saw it was flawed. Right. So the next section. So that's enough about the photo. But do you guys, the photo itself, would you rather have the picture or the photo or the painting? I think I'd personally prefer the picture. But it's just not consistent with the other images that we have on the altar. So, but if we were to change it, then the picture, I think personally, would be my ideal preference. It's got so much more vibrance to it, I feel. Lauren?
I feel the exact same, because like I said, I haven't really looked at that photograph until as we were on this podcast now. And I feel that the painting has such a warmth to me, and it definitely has something, but the picture has so much joy. I don't know if you've received this when you looked at it, but when I was looking at it, you could feel that joyful, blissful presence. So yeah, definitely a photograph for me, just because it's reality. Yeah. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, pretty much the same. For me, a picture taken is just more real. Looks like the actual person. Whereas the painting is that picture that I've seen a million times and I'm so used to it when I look at it. So I'm actually really glad they both exist, because when I look at the altar picture, I just don't think much about it. It's like we spoke about this in the last episode, right? That a picture of a master is actually it's not about the picture, it's about the connection that you make to the master, right? And I feel like the altar picture does this perfectly. However, that photograph somehow makes it easier for me to imagine that I'm in the same room with him right now. It makes it feel really real.
Why do you think his expression is much more pointed in the actual picture? His gaze is much more piercing. There's a bit of a frown going on. He's kind of like looking straight. Like, I've never seen anyone look straight into the camera as much as he's doing. It's like his eyes are in the lens, yet they're like 5 meters away, or how far he was. So he's almost like breaking the device with that gaze. Mike?
It could also be a chuckle that is concealed by his mustache. Right? And I feel like his eyes, like in the photograph, you see his eyes, right? They're actually piercing at you, whereas in the painting you don't see it that much.
Mm, mm. And there's a little dimple where the third eye is as well, which is invisible on the painting, but it's very, very visible on the picture. And also his hair is very like frayed, a bit like what mine is right now, to the sides, like on the picture, past his ears, whereas on the painting it's a bit more tame. Same with the mustache, I suppose. It's a bit more tame on the painting compared to the picture. Yeah, lots of reflections. But yeah, I really feel like I want to get a life-size picture of this print of this and just make this my altar and just meditate right opposite. Could you imagine? That'd be such a good, like, put it on like a obviously elevated platform. That would be a pretty cool experience. I wonder if anyone's done that. Yeah, tell us, listeners, if you've what your thoughts are on the painting versus the picture, and how you use pictures of Guruji's. And interestingly, the other pictures in the Yogananda's living room. So if you go into that living room, on the left there's a picture of Lahiri Mahasaya. If you go a bit further past the window, there's a woven picture of Sri Yukteswar, and opposite that is a picture of Babaji. And perhaps I don't know, but perhaps that is the original pencil rendering that Yogananda got made. Mike, perhaps when you're next at the Mother Center, you could ask that question, because there's a picture of Babaji there, and perhaps that is the original one that Guruji got made. We don't know. So the one one of our listeners told us just today, actually, he must have somehow known we were going to discuss this, because the monk, he was just there a couple of days ago, and the monk told him that picture of Sri Yukteswar, that was the one where, on the day of Guruji's Mahasamadhi, that's the picture where he stopped and looked at it for many minutes, and then told Dharma that it's a matter of hours before I'll be no longer on this. So that's the picture. That's the famous picture. So I really want to go there, go back there. I just remember being so absolutely overwhelmed with the energy and the devotion. So I couldn't really take in these little intricacies when I went, but I need to push that to one side and all this for the purpose of this podcast and ask all these questions. Yeah, so Lahiri Mahasaya's picture. So Yogananda has given a paragraph of explanation. He says that he's fair, and his features are fair, and he's of a universal caste. We were talking about that before this minute as to what a universal caste means. I think it means that it's talking more about like a race. It's difficult to see what race he is because he is very fair. So he could easily be, depicted. He could be seen as an Indian or a Western person or a Middle Eastern person. What are you saying, Mike?
German.
or like my dad and Irishman. I said they look similar.
In North India and in Kashmir especially, there's fair featured, and I think you're going to talk about this later, isn't it? Blue-eyed, blonde hair, brown hair, you name it. You can't. When I was in Florida a few weeks ago. There was these two like completely English-looking people, and they were speaking Urdu, or it's virtually the same as Hindi. And I was like, "Oh, they can't be speaking. They just look so English." And then I spoke to them, and they're like, "Yeah, we're from this part of Pakistan." And I was like, "Wow, it's just absolutely phenomenal, phenomenal." But yeah, so yeah, you can't see what race he belongs to. Your Guruji has described, and he's got the joy of God is slightly revealed in his enigmatic smile. His eyes are half open to denote a nominal interest in the outer world, are also half closed, indicating his absorption in inner bliss. I'll read that again. His eyes half open to denote a nominal interest in the outer world, are also half closed, indicating his absorption in inner bliss. So, eyes half open and half closed. Let's talk about that. Mike,
One thing that I thought of there was that's how astral beings are as well, right? Astral beings, they have their eyes half closed because they perceive mainly through the spiritual eye, right? And maybe that's him. Has the eyes half closed, but he doesn't have them up. He has them level, so he also sees the world. And then the other half of his attention is on the spiritual eye, probably to perceive infinite.
Yeah, let's read what God Talks Origin says about this half open, closed eyes. So if you go to that fourth part of that description, people. So this is on chapter 6, verse 13. Chris, do you want to start?
Sure. The characteristic of the physical eyes is to perceive creation or matter by looking at one thing at a time, by shifting the gaze, or by looking at several points at the same time. The nature of the spherical eye is to behold all matter, all energy, and all consciousness simultaneously. Man, made in the image of God, has in his forehead the Lord's all-seeing power. Christ referred as follows to the omnipresent eye of God. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a farthing? And one of them shall not fall on the ground without this side of your Father. Jesus, lifting up his eyes and looking through his single omnipresent eye, ever found himself at one with the cosmic consciousness of the Father, the Lord who simultaneously perceives all material universes, all the astral universes, and all the ideational universes.
The ordinary man, yeah. The ordinary man, concentrating his vision with half-closed eyes at the point between the eyebrows, feels eye strain in the beginning, owing to the unfamiliar practice. The yogi, on the other hand, used to concentrating upward on his spiritual eye, finds it distasteful to identify his consciousness with the downward material vision of his 2 physical eyes. Concentrating on the point between the 2 eyebrows during meditation helps the devotee to keep his eyes neither fully closed nor fully opened. This practice prevents the onrush of either subconscious slumber or complete conscious wakefulness. Thus, the meditating yogi learns to penetrate into the superconscious sphere existing between the subconscious darkness above and the visible light below.
Hope that makes a bit more sense now, Chris. I think it's
It does.
kind of leads on, yeah. Mike?
The dividing line between the upper darkness and the lower material light of the half-closed and half-opened eyes is called the horizon of superconsciousness. A person meditating with closed eyes may fall asleep. Trying to meditate with open eyes, he may be thwarted by the stubborn vision of matter. That is why the yogi is advised to avoid the total darkness of closed eyes and the full light of opened eyes. Instead, concentrates his vision on the superconscious horizon.
I was trying that just today, actually. I was on the top floor of a bus, and there was a very lovely horizon, sun-setting horizon image. It was like a pink, yellow, you name the colors, indescribable glory, basically. And I thought I was preparing for this. I was reading this, this super conscious horizon. So I kind of did this practice. I stopped what I was doing and just kept my eyes on the actual horizon and on the super conscious horizon at the same time. And there's quite a good, because obviously the bus moves around, it was quite a good 5-10 seconds, I must say. Does anyone else practice this super conscious horizon method of meditation? Personally, when I'm meditating, it's usually just eyes fully closed. I'm not very good at this super conscious horizon stuff generally. Mike?
I remember we were talking about this in the other podcast about the Awake film. And for me, I like this. I like doing this, especially in long meditations, because it just helps me keep my attention up. Because when I close my eyes, I sometimes feel like I have my eyes up, but are they really up? It's all dark. It's dark up, it's dark down, it's dark in the middle. And when you so when you have it half open, then they drop, you notice it immediately. So I feel like that's why this is a good method.
That's true. The darkness is all around us. Unless you can see the light. Chris, can you see the light? You're very well lit on your forehead right now.
Yeah, it's more like it's getting
big spiritual eye.
Yeah. Yeah, it's getting darker around me. That's the reality. It's a great practice, isn't it? And often when people talk to me about meditation, like, oh, how can I meditate? What can I do? I actually do say to people, find best practice for you. And sometimes for me, when I was starting off, it was actually fixating on a point. And yeah, now it's a point between the eyebrows and up. But I think whether you're physically looking there or keeping your attention there is something that I can say that I've played with as well, which is keeping your attention at the point between your eyebrows, or this superconscious horizon, is really effective. And you can do that all day. And, as we're talking now, I'm looking at a screen, but you can try to keep your attention, as long as your attention is there, is really, really impactful for me, doing that in meditation, and just as you're going through your daily life as well. But yeah, I remember early on, when I was starting out, my eyes were fluttering, and I think it was maybe, as Mike said, sometimes when you're closing your eyes, you're like, am I really looking up? And then you can stress too much the eyes because you're trying to look too high or something. It does take a little bit of practice to get right, but it is essential in the meditative process now.
One of the core practices of there's a Raja meditation group called the Brahma Kumaris, and one of their core practices is to meditate with eyes open, or probably in this super conscious kind of state, and they have to just look at this image that's representative of the spiritual eye. Chris, is your hand still up?
No, it shouldn't be.
Put your hands down. Just kidding. No, listeners, what we do, we got this Zoom thing where you're raising our hands if we got something to say. And Chris is not following the discipline, unfortunately. There's there's a talking about discipline. There's this game that we used to play at school where you guys played it. You have a coin and you press it on your forehead, and you press it really hard on your spiritual eye, actually, interestingly, and then it's because you pushed it so hard it sticks. So then you kind of do this, and then you try and get it off, and then you can get it off. Then you'll be like to your friend, oh, you try it. Then you do it to your friend, and then you actually take it off, but because you've been pressing so hard, they think it's still on. So they're just doing this, you can't use your hands. They're like bashing their head against the wall because it just doesn't come off. But it's obviously a trick. A good game. Maybe useful for meditation. But yeah, back to you. Yeah, go on.
I have heard, it is such a silly comment, but I have heard people putting, maybe, different things like eating chili. Somebody said they put chili one time. But why would you do that to yourself? Put chili in your forehead just to kind of have that sensation. But yeah, sort of wacky, weird, and wonderful things.
Mike?
But this is a real thing, right? Especially in Indian puja ceremonies, right? That you put something on the spiritual eye because it helps you focus your attention there, right? Yeah,
you put vibhuti, which is a sacred ash of various grasses and herbs and woods, and it's very fragrant. And it's ash basically, and you smear it like this, and you smear it here on your different areas of your chakras, basically where energy centers are. Chris?
I think often that goes overlooked is Catholics do that as well, right? We put Ash Wednesday, put ash in the foreheads. And often I was talking to my mum about this. She doesn't know about Easter. philosophies and going on. So it's like, do you know what you have in common actually with Hinduism and yogic kind of practices? And one was this. She was really happy actually that there was some kind of universality to it. She thought it was more than copying the Christians, not the way around.
Out of our altar images, actually, it's only Krishna Bhagwan that has actually employed that. As he's got this like U shape. I don't know if you can actually see it. Mine's like prominent. Can you see that? You see that U?
These are the two veins, yeah.
Yeah. They say like, oh, if you're spiritually inclined, this will start protruding more and more. It's things that Indians say to themselves. But Chris, yours seems to you got the veins going there as well.
It's getting there. I'm obviously doing my meditations. Taking note.
Back to Lahiri Mahasaya. So yeah, he's fair features, universal caste, etc. And he's kind of describing like similar to how you describe Babaji, isn't it? Excluding the hair. But I can't, Guruji says they look, Babaji looks like a young version of Lahiri Mahasaya later on, but I can't personally, I can't see it. I don't know about you guys.
I calling him old.
But obviously he's older. Well, sorry, he's not older, is he? What am I saying? Babaji's older, is he? But I can't see it. Maybe one day, I'm hoping one day, like when my devotion is pure enough, I'll be like, oh yes, they're the same, they look exactly the same. But that day, alas, is not here. Mike?
Yeah, as a kid, when my parents told me that, I always found that hard to believe. Like, I have to back you up on this. I see no resemblance between them at all. But maybe it's the mustache and yeah.
Listeners, have you had your epiphany moment? Let us know if you have. Mike and I haven't. I don't know about Lauren. Have you had yours yet? No.
No, I was thinking this exact thing today. I was thinking, I can't see the resemblance. Maybe one day. Maybe. What about you, Chris?
No, I'm struggling to see it, but as you say, dedication, maybe one day.
Yeah. So that's his description. So
actually, sorry,
yeah.
just a little tidbit thought. Correct me if this is incorrect, but don't they say that when you feel a certain connection to a master, you begin to see yourself in his frame? So you look at their picture and you see like your own quality, right? Well, perhaps there's something there with, Lahiri Mahasaya and Babaji. Perhaps once we merge ourselves with all the different masters' consciousnesses, we will see them all as one and us as them. But yeah, maybe it's a spiritual advanced thing. I don't know.
One day the epiphany will come.
Indeed.
We will delight.
We will rejoice.
Glory. Yes, we will rejoice. Talking about rejoicement, we skipped over this, but Guruji describes that he has this enigmatic smile. Now, I found this section. If you go to 3 in the description, Lauren, found a section where Krishna's smile is described. Do you want to read that?
If I can find it, I would love to
Item
read
3. I'll read it. So only devotees who have
Oh.
led a clean life, i.e. proper eating, right behavior, and deep meditation, and have thus attained advancement, are fortunate enough to behold the smile of spirit and to hear his voice of wisdom. Even though such a devotee is temporarily not advancing, if surrenders completely to God and lifts his consciousness from the senses and focuses it at the kutastha, he will hear the instructive, etheric vibrations of spirit, the secret sounds of emancipating vibrations. So this is what what obviously Arjuna was showing, perhaps in his smile when he was near Krishna, when he was becoming more and more realized, or before he had his, or after he had his vision of Krishna. The other thing I wanted to discuss in this paragraph was that the last line, he says that oblivious of the poor lures of the earth, he was fully awake at all times to the spiritual problems of seekers who approached for his bounty, which is pretty phenomenal. I've got some, spiritual seekers. What did Lahiri Mahasaya tell spiritual seekers? And if you look in the comment section of this card, Lauren, you should find in Swami Satyananda's book, Lahiri Mahasaya told them that Lahiri Mahasaya had some guidelines for devotees. Do you want to read them out, Lauren?
Yes. 1. Know yourself as very small, meaning service, worship, and feeling of subservience. In brackets, I am subservient, yet I have kinship to all. 2. Always do satsanga, meaning the company of holy people or studying holy books. 3. From time to time, gather together and discuss. 4. Do not disrespect any name of the divine. And 5. Once a year, leave the worldly duties and stay apart, 1 month or 1 fortnight or 1 week, or at least 3 days.
Chris, have you nailed all 5 of those?
Definitely do with some of number 5. I think that sounds great, doesn't it? Just escaping. I wonder what he actually meant in detail. Once a year.
Guruji talks about this, like spending a few days retreats, getting away from
retreats.
Yeah, basically getting
Silent
away from
retreats.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, going away and meditating. You take your mind off God. Keep your phone at home. All that good stuff.
On God.
Yeah.
Said on God. Yeah, it's great, and something that I think we do nicely here. Why I love partly what I love about what we do in this podcast is that we're taking some of these off. I think.
Yes.
By doing what we're doing, which is great, isn't it?
Indeed, very simple, I thought, and quite important. They're like very basic steps, aren't they? That you could just tell everyone, but actually not everyone does it anyway. Mike?
For number 5, when I was in Encinitas yesterday, I like talking to people at the retreat office and was like begging them, open up again.
Oh, they're not open yet.
I was just asking them when they would reopen, and hopefully not in the too far future. Same for Hidden Valley. I'd like to go back there. But in the meantime, you can always do a retreat on your own or a retreat with some devotee friends, and I think that also works well.
Christoph,
why do you think the first one was maybe the first one? I mean, I thought they're in significance, but
do you want to describe what the first one is?
Small.
Yeah,
go for it.
Yeah, describe. Sorry, yeah, know yourself as very small. Yeah, go on. What was your question?
Meaning, service, worship, and feeling of subservience. It's interesting. I wonder what you think. Why that is? Is it to do with the ego? Is it to do with maybe comprehending God? Just put it out there. What do people think on that? Mike?
I feel like it's we talked about it in the last minute a little bit about this prayer that where you say, I am nothing, thou art the doer, thy will be done, right? And that we don't interfere with God's plan, that we just try instead to try serving his work and trying to also serve him, helping us.
And also it could be, what use are the other ones potentially? Not as in the complete disregarding, but how useful will they really be for you if you don't know yourself as very small? If you don't know yourself in that way where you're, being of service and all of this, then you could spend time with the holiest of men and it's still not really reach you, potentially.
Indeed. It just also sounds just like good sense to be humble, to the meek shall inherit the kingdom. So the way Gandhi, that was pretty much his approach, right? To think, to experience yourself as less. The less you think of yourself, the more divinity you can express, the real self than you can express or shines through. Yes, so let's move on to the last part of this. There's two visions here that Guruji puts in here, very profound visions. And before we go to them, let's read a bit of a section about Mejda. So if you open card 5, everyone. So, I'm sure I speak for the majority of us when I say you'd be very, very blessed to have a vision such as the ones that Guruji has. But what in your youth, I mean, Guruji had these visions when he was a mere boy, right? What in your youth did you do to warrant having such a vision? Personally, I can say for myself, I did nothing to warrant having vision, and I don't think I did anyway. Don't think I had any such meaningful visions as Guruji did. So let's see what in Mejda Guruji's state of mind was when he was young. What was his state of mind? Chris, do you want to read out this section that he wrote a letter to? We wrote a letter to God, would you believe?
Yeah, it's a good person to write, or I was going to say good person to write a letter to, but that's person. Anyway, to your beautiful lotus feet, my Bhagavan. How are you? Are you ill? I talk to you every day and ask you to send me a letter. Probably you have forgotten my request. I'm very hurt. You know that my letters come. That's a mistake. Yeah. Letters come to my father and mother, my eldest brother, but no one sends a letter to me. Certainly, you will send me a letter. Please write quickly. Don't forget about it. What else shall I write? Father and mother are well. Thus bowed, Mukunda.
Read that section out, that last bit, yeah?
The last bit as well. The letter was carefully folded and put into an envelope and pasted shut. He addressed it to the splendid God heaven and posted it. Mejda. It's awesome.
Chris, I know you walked down your long street, but did you post a letter to Heavenly Father?
I think the closest I got to it was writing a letter to Santa when I was young, saying about how good a boy I was, and if there was a gift. But to be fair, I never really asked for anything specific. It was just more of a letter of gratitude, and that's close.
And this is the crux of it, isn't it? We talked about this at the start. How do you approach a guru? Most people approach, can you please give me this and give me that? Santa, the Santa culture is the epitome of that, isn't it? Not many people would ask Santa for, happiness, just happiness, joy, health, and if you do, then you're probably quite an advanced being. Lauren?
Just think it's so sweet. Like, I don't know if any of you had this, but I certainly did. When I was younger, you would see your parents get letters, and I used to think, oh, I wish I'd get a letter. And here's little Mukunda. Like, all he wants is a letter from God. That's all he wants. It's just so pure. Yeah.
I can't say it's pretty good practice as well, isn't it? To really put your devotion down in that way, because you never know what sort of answer might come back. That's a real heartfelt message. And when I started off, trying to search for something more in life, I quickly did come across the path of Autobiography of a Yogi, but I did read a book called Conversation with God by a guy called Neil Donald Walsh. And it is a 3-part series and just a fantastic read, very easy read. And it essentially is this conversation with God. A chap got very fed up with life and wrote to God this kind of angry letter, like, hey, I've devoted my life to you. What's going on? My life has fallen to pieces. But then found that he was writing back the response that was being channeled by God. So if you're going to write to anybody, it's a pretty good practice. No, you never know what response you might get. Sorry.
It also shows that Guruji had this spiritual inclination from the very beginning, right? When he was already a little boy. So, I mean, you can see that your parents got letters, but you don't want a letter from anybody. You want just a letter from God, right? And you send it to him. And I find it just amazing that this still exists, that his brother actually wrote this down in a book for us, and we can see how he was as a boy. I can totally imagine this moment. And when you have those when you're the parents and you have like, I think 8 kids, right? And then one of them you feel like has such a strong desire for God, even when he's super young. And it's very beautiful.
I wonder, what do you do with that though? Because his mum or dad would have got this letter back somehow. Don't know how they would, because he actually posted this letter. So maybe he put his address back at the back of it. So he must have come back. The postman must have been like, what a beautiful, let me give it back to his dad. What a beautiful letter. Because can you imagine as a postman reading this? You'd think it's a joke, wouldn't you? So I was so glad that he opened it and actually gave it back to his father. But what, as his father or mother, what do you do with that? You could be very, very mean, and you could be like, pretend to be God and respond. Or would that be mean? Would that be cute? You could do that. You could just say some lovely things that perhaps quote scripture. So it is as if God would respond. It would be quite inspiring, wouldn't it? But yeah, Lauren?
A little anecdote. When I was younger, my sister, she got little tiny pieces of paper and she wrote to me, I think it was my birthday, from the fairies. And she left it outside my bedroom door, right? And one day I got this tiny little letter in teeny tiny handwriting. I was like, wow, it's from the fairies, right? And we would write back and forth, me and this, right? This went on for a long time. And then I think it got to one of my birthdays, and they said, when you get to your birthday, the Queen Fairy will write to you, and she'll no longer be writing to you anymore because you're too old to be writing, right? So anyway, years passed, or however long it was, and my sister revealed to me, that it wasn't the fairies. It was her writing in teeny tiny handwriting in teeny tiny little letters. And I just thought it was the nicest thing ever, because even though it wasn't real, she'd gone to all of that effort to actually like make something real and something useful. And yeah, it's just kind of like, I think it's sweet, even if it wasn't real.
This is the difference between boys and girls, because I assure you, if you had brothers and your brother was doing this, that would be the meanest, like the most vindictive, like little comments that would come back. Do this, leave this amount of money under this tree.
Give your sister all your possessions.
Exactly. This is why sometimes it's good to have sisters,
yeah, with a very pure heart.
Yeah, exactly. Boys are just boys. So now we know the state of young Mukunda when he has experiences such as what is in this part of the book. So we just described the picture, where the picture came from, and the reason he was describing the picture is because he just had this divine healing, which we talked about in the previous episode, from looking at this picture, him and his mother with deep devotion, and he survived Asiatic cholera. So this vision that he's about to describe here is shortly after that, that healing, and he calls it a very influential spiritual vision. So he was sitting on his bed, and he fell into a deep stillness, reverie, he calls it, and as he was written, "What is behind the darkness of closed eyes?" The probing thought came powerfully into my mind. An immense flash of light at once manifested to my inner gaze. Divine shapes of saints sitting in meditation posture in mountain caves, formed like miniature cinema pictures on the large screen of radiance, within my forehead. Ah, I long to go to the Himalayas and become like you. The vision vanished, but the silvery beams expanded in ever-widening circles to infinity. So quite a profound image. And in the description of that image, it's almost as if it's the exact same cave that is written about in when Lahiri Mahasaya meets Babaji in that mountain cave, and where Babaji initiates Lahiri Mahasaya, and then also grants him that beautiful palace, materialization of a palace in the Himalayas. So it feels like exactly that scenario, and it feels like those around would have been Babaji, Lahiri Mahasaya perhaps, and Sri Yukteswar perhaps, who he wouldn't have recognized yet. And later on, he says, the faces I've seen in 1,000 visions of Lahiri Mahasaya, he described. Perhaps this is one of those many thousands of visions that he's had. So all exceptionally significant for Guruji as a boy, and very beautifully and poetically written, isn't it, Mike?
You ever ask yourself why Guruji as a young boy wanted to run away and go to the Himalayas? I think experiences like this made it even stronger for him, right? To just want to go there, because if I had a vision like that, I would like, okay, I gotta go there. That gotta mean something, right? And then he would probably think, I go to Himalayas, and then all those people will be there waiting for me.
And also probably, like, if you look beyond the opening of the cave, there's probably a grand golden palace that Lahiri Mahasaya has materialized, and he also wants to go into that palace, but he doesn't talk about that. But it's interesting that he says, I long to go to the Himalayas. So this would appear that he's had this inclination even before this vision. So potentially, like when he was born, he said distant memories of Himalayan yogis, right? So even before this vision, then perhaps that idea of Himalayas was imprinted in his consciousness and subconsciousness and super consciousness. So yeah, very well described there. And then the vision vanished and then turned into, I'm calling it a second vision, but perhaps it is the same vision, because he says that the silvery beams expanded in ever-widening circles to infinity. But we're calling it a second part because this is very specific. There, what you had previously, what we just described, was something called darshan. So darshan is, being in the presence of something or someone holy with reverence, and that is darshan. And here it goes beyond darshan to actual an explanation of existence, because he writes here, what is this wondrous glow? And the response, I am Ishvara, I am light. The voice was as murmuring clouds. I want to be one with thee. So let's repeat that. What is this wondrous glow? I am Ishvara, I am light. The voice was as murmuring clouds. I want to be one with thee. So Guruji there describes quite beautifully a very profound experience that he had as a youth. And the next line kind of talks about, he says, out of the slow dwindling of my divine ecstasy, I salvaged a permanent legacy of inspiration to seek God. And I don't think it would be very difficult to have this wonderful inspiration out of something so divine that happened to you at such a young age. So then it says, He is eternal, ever new joy. This memory persisted long after the day of rapture. So firstly, Ishvara then. Ishvara is described in the book, in the autobiography by Asterix. It's described as a Sanskrit name for Lord in the aspect of cosmic ruler. From the root is, to rule. The Hindu scriptures contain 1,000 names for God, each one carrying a different shade of philosophical meaning. The Lord as Ishvara is he by whose will all universes in orderly cycles are created and dissolved. Chris?
I don't know about you guys, but this would have been one of the first times I would have been exposed to the idea of universes, plural. You know, when you're reading this, it's revelations after revelations. But as we heard, previously about the multi-universes and things like this, as Yogananda sort of describes the multitude of it, the vastness of it. If your mind hasn't been boggled, already, certainly in the common Western world, we talk about the universe, and we're talking about more theories of there being more. But it would have been quite a recent thing, and there's Yogananda talking about it back, 100 years ago. It is, that's the least impressive bit, I suppose, of all of this in some way, but it is just so great that he openly discusses it. He certainly doesn't hide any nature of reality from us for any reason there.
Trust you to come up with the universes thing, Chris. I'm sure you're going to come back to the yugas in time now.
The yugas.
In the next part of the conversation.
In time.
Mike?
When we meditate, we often focus on, or we try to focus on the spiritual eye, and we want to become, we feel peace, and we want to become one with this peace, right? We focus on it, and one thing, this light appears to him, and then the light says, I want to be one with thee, right? So it's the other way around as well, which I liked when I read this. So it's not just a one-way street.
Hold on. Is it not Guruji saying, I want to be one with thee?
Is it though? Does he? But
So,
it says the voice was in class. Does he say? Maybe he says that, but maybe it's the voice saying it. I'm not sure.
Interesting. So so it's a new line. So I am Ishvara, I am light, and then in the same line it says the voice was as murmuring clouds, and then there's a new line which suggests that it's Guruji. Responding suggests, I could be wrong, suggests that Guruji is responding with that question.
Okay, in that case, forget what I said.
Scrap that. But no, God does want to be one. He's desired for us to be one, doesn't he? So it could equally be God.
You're just patronizing me now.
No.
Chris?
What is quite interesting for me there is I established a permanent legacy of inspiration to seek God, out of this dwindling, slow experience, he says. If he hadn't have been already, dedicated and devoted to God, this must have been such a vastly new experience for him, to a renewing experience. Let's put it that way. To get him on the path of seeking God. He himself says it. So that what that says to me is that the strength of Maya, the delusion, the distractions in this earthly plane is still, I think that's essentially to me what it's saying is like, even being in the presence of God would shatter all of these dreams and delusions that we have that are so strong. And he's there said it's eternal, ever new joy. So being in that presence just blows everything out of the water. But it is to say, give credit where credit's due to the enemy, that is the delusion so strong, as well.
I'm wondering what language they were speaking. The voice was a murmuring cloud. So young Mukunda would have only have been speaking Bengali, though he did know some basic English even then, back then. But I imagine it was not a language. It was just feelings, or maybe it was a language, I don't know. But the language is certainly very well expressed by Yogananda in the book, or the feeling is very well expressed in the language. Yeah, quite powerful. And it's quite, yeah, Mike?
It's just going into languages now, but do we know if Guruji spoke Hindi well, or if he needed to? And do Bengali people speak Hindi these days?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Languages are similar enough for it to be very easily to be picked up on, and because the national language is Hindi and English, they would have been all over. So you have to, you know, in the radio, they would have been speaking Hindi often. Obviously, the politicians, and so yeah, so that's why both those languages that would be prominent. Yeah, what was I going to say? Lost my thought. Oh yeah, this two-part vision is quite cinematic, isn't it? So he's the first vision is he's like teleported very, very nicely into a Himalayan cave, and then he kind of says that there's like the vision vanishes, but the silvery beams expand into ever widening circles to infinity, which is quite often it's done in cinema, isn't it? That style of changing from one scene to another, especially if it's something that's momentous that's about to happen, like a flashback, or dare I say, a heavenly experience. So you can imagine this description that Guruji has done is our imagination is quite easily triggered into what this experience would have been like, and equally it would be quite easy to portray on cinema, wouldn't it, and reenact this scene. Obviously it'd be more difficult to reenact a language that isn't a language, a non-spoken language, if that was what happened, but it'd be quite good to see someone, because I've got this imagination of what this scene was like. It'd be quite interesting to see what Chris's is like.
Yeah, you've got the literal interpretation of it, right? And you could say the murmuring clouds. You would have the clouds in there with light beaming out of them, murmuring away. But what language they would use, I don't know. But yeah, literally, it could be quite easy.
He says with like a cloud right above your head right now. It's just like a gap in the trees. There's a gap in the trees and you can just see clouds. It's quite nice. So this concept of Ishvara, let's talk about it. So it's one of the forms of God that Hindu scriptures declare. One of the names that is often used, Ishvara, is used in mantras as well. So let's hear what God talks with Arjuna has to say about this conception of God, of Ishvara. Chris, do you want to start? Oh, sorry, hold on. I should say that this description. So this is after. So Krishna grants Arjuna something called the vision of visions, where Krishna asks to see his actual form, Krishna's actual form. And therefore then Krishna shows him the cosmic bodied Ishvara form, which was very scary to Arjuna. He trembled. It was quite a gruesome sight, and it was quite magnificent and gruesome. It was all the superlatives that you can imagine, but then it's described by Guruji in the description here, the Ishvara. Chris?
And this is chapter 7, verse 5. Arduous is the path to the absolute. No,
Chris, sorry, it's actually chapter 11. Just this section is that. So ignore that. It's actually chapter 11 that this is in. Ignore that brackets thing.
Okay. Well, misinformation there. Arduous is the path to the absolute. or embodied beings. What mortal faculty may know the unknowable or perceive the imperceptible? It is less difficult for man to conceive of a personal immanent God who has dreamed himself into his universe of definite forms. The worship of God as personal in one of his many aspects, or as represented by his divine emissaries, such as Krishna or Christ, who instruct and intercede on behalf of erring humanity, is easy and beneficial, and even necessary for the beginner. The Lord is interested in the devotee's genuine devotion to him, no matter what true concept formulates the worship. The devotee who realizes the personal God in a form will eventually realize him also as the omnipresent, formless, infinite.
Arjuna, with the frontal vision of his two physical eyes, saw his divine guru Krishna standing before him on the field, Kurukshetra. Sri Krishna then opened the all-seeing spiritual eye of Arjuna. Being at one with the cosmic consciousness of spirit, Krishna transferred his omnipresent vision to Arjuna, whose spiritual advancement had now prepared him to receive the awakening touch of the Guru's bestowal of God realization. It was then that Arjuna beheld the very form of Krishna metamorphose into an omnipotent image of the oneness of Krishna's consciousness with the infinite.
Arjuna saw the entire astral and physical universes in the shape of a cosmic bodied idol, having evolved from the causal universal dreamings of God as Ishvara, the supreme being. The Absolute became God the Father of creation. The vision was at once both wondrously sublime and fearfully dreadful. Creation, preservation, and dissolution, continuously and successively roiling in the omnipresent blessed light of spirit. The benign, attractive forms within the cosmic idol represent the creative and preservative forces of nature. The gruesome aspects, the devouring of the world and beings, are expressions of the dissolving power in creation, whereby all dualities, ugly in contrast to the singular, infinite purity, are consumed and spumed forth again and again to be transformed ultimately into the divine essence of their origin.
Urging Arjuna to the representative devotee to take up unreservedly his divine duty in the supernal cosmic workings, the universal Lord exhorts him, "Arise, awake, my ancient thou. Oh, this is how I work my plans, the universe, through instruments diverse." The awakened man no longer feels himself in competition with God, but in partnership with him.
So, this form of Ishvara, is it a concept a conception that you could get on board with? So Guruji in the first paragraph here says that, it's necessary for the, basically the beginner to see the physical form of Krishna or Christ as the manifestation of divinity. But then he goes on to say that, Chris.
It's quite challenging in some ways, I think, maybe for me to read. I remember when I first read this in the
God talks about
Bhagavad Gita. And I remember when I first read it, I thought it's to grapple with the idea of this nothingness, that God is everything and nothing, is maybe beyond what I was brought up with as going through Christianity and things like this, where everything's quite separate. And it's just, as I said before, I think I'll just use this to coin this whole episode. For me, just boggles the mind. For me, it's just hard to grapple with this idea. For Guruji, for Arjuna, who we've talked about in the previous episode, who there's whispers that he may have been the reincarnation of Arjuna in some sense. Then I'm sure it would have been exactly what he needed at that time. But for most of us mere mortals, I would not dare to have that experience in my current state.
For me, it felt that there's like two things he describes. He describes the great spirit of Krishna himself, or of God, and then also he kind of explains that he suddenly saw creation from a different perspective, from behind the scenes, like popped the hood open. That reminded me a bit of Priyank's favorite movie, The Matrix. You know, when you like take the red pill and suddenly you are wake up in this pod and you see, oh my God, this is all just a big machine. So maybe it was something like that, like just this whole feeling that this whole creation is not real, and suddenly this becomes a truth to you. Maybe this is a scary thought. I can imagine.
I absolutely love the gentle, playful form of Krishna, as well as the the serious, meditative, yogi form of Krishna. There's, I think, probably more paintings, certainly in India, more paintings and pictures of Krishna than any other god has ever been created. I'd say maybe even challenging how many have been done for Christ, because there's so many different forms. Even his like skin color, like there's a form of Krishna that's black, completely black. Then there's blue, then there's the regular color as well. So, and each of them have got different symbolisms and different names as well. Krishna's got so many different names. But yeah, I personally, as the God aspect, the personal aspect I relate most to is Krishna, mostly because of my cultural heritage. But when I'm meditating, it's not Krishna that I personally look to visualize. I only think of the God and Gurus before and after, their physical forms before and after meditation, i.e. when I'm doing the prayer with open eyes. But after that, the in-between phases, it's the Ishvara form that is, for me, that's what's described here. The one that is, God that is beyond physical form or manifestation. That's one which resonates most with me. What about you, Lauren?
Yeah, I actually find it quite difficult to conceptualize God as a physical form. It's something that I'd actually quite like to be able to do, because I think it would be quite useful, especially, as it's relatively new, this path, within the past year and a half or so. But yeah, I'm similar. For me, it's the formless God that appeals to me the most. It's that the qualities, perhaps, that I connect most with. Yeah.
Very nice, very nice. Listeners, tell us what you think of this Ishvara form, and which form of divinity most resonates with your meditative practices. Perhaps we'll be interested to read and share your experiences if you feel so inclined. No compulsion. So that sums up the whole minute. Thank you very much, everyone, for being with us. It was quite a long exposition of these three simple things that we talked about, i.e. the picture, and how it came to pass, and Guruji's beautiful two visions that he had. So that's that. Next chapter, Mike, do you want to give a quick run through of it? Next part, this will be the last part.
The last part of chapter 1. So yes, we're going to wrapping up chapter 1, and it's going to be there's a story with Guruji using this ointment on his arm, even though he doesn't really have anything there, and then his sister kind of criticizes him for it, and we all know how it plays out. And it's basically him as a kid already showing that he has special powers, and that when he prays to Divine Mother, that things happen. And we will also try to kind of summarize chapter 1 a little bit in the end. And yeah, so we have gone through chapter 1 in 6 parts by then, and then we'll go from there. Chapter 2 afterwards.
It'll be nice to do a bit of a summary of chapter 1. Hopefully we can do that, and our feelings and reflections after doing a more in-depth study than perhaps we've ever done before of any chapter of any book, I dare say. There's also, Mike, the kite story as well. That's a nice one in that chapter.
And the cactus plant. Yeah.
Yes. And I'm going to bring in a nice story from Medster as well. Did you know that Guruji being a necromancer is not untrue? We'll explain a bit more. We'll explain a bit more. Black magic is part of it.
I'll do some Medster reading as well for that episode. I finally got the hardcover.
Nice. Did you just get that recently?
Yeah, when I was in Encinitas, I got it there. Yeah.
Very nice. You can be an expert now. Sananda, expert.
Slowly.
On that note, everyone, thank you very much. We shall see you next week. Same time, same place.
Jai Guru.
Jai Guru.
Jai Guru.